Isaac Asimov's Vintage Paperbacks. Hi, I'm Gary Lovisi, and this time we're going to look at one of the greatest science fiction writers ever, Isaac Asimov, and some of his vintage paperbacks. This is not, and by any stretch of the imagination, a complete run of his books. This is just a couple of dozen of some of his most famous ones in paperback. Isaac Asimov wrote over 500 books, and here's some of the spines you can see. He was born in 1920 in Russia, and he died in 1992 in Brooklyn, New York. He was a professor of biochemistry. He wrote 500 books, fiction and nonfiction, and he was a strongly pro-science, anti-violence, and pro-rational writer. One of his quotes, which I always felt was like really like very important, significant, was that he said that violence is the last refuge of the incompetent. And if you think about that, it has a lot of meaning. I think it's a great way of looking at violence and being anti-violent. He was a kid growing up in Brooklyn. His parents owned a candy store, and he would work in the candy store as a kid. And they would have a magazine rack where they had all kinds of magazines. They had Amazing Stories, science fiction magazine, the first one at the time, which is a pulp magazine, in the 20s and in the 30s. And he was reading the stories as they came out on the stands in his parents' candy store, and then eventually became a science fiction writer, as well as a scientist and a professor. So here's a few of his books we're going to take a look at now. He wrote a lot of great books. He's best known for the Foundation series and for his robot novels. And there's one of the books is Avon from the 60s, Foundation and Empire. A British Panther book from the 1960s. This is a second printing of Foundation. That's the first book in the series. It's actually, it should go Foundation and second Foundation. This is the Avon book also, and then Foundation and Empire. Those are the three books of the Foundation trilogy. They were published in Astounding Science Fiction magazine, then in Gnome Press hardcovers, and reprinted many times. This is the British Panther edition, and they were reprinted. There's another copy of Foundation and Empire, a little different.
Very little.
And another Valentine edition with a Barclay Shaw cover of Foundation and Empire. And the books were reprinted many times, and then after, in the 70s and 80s, he wrote, continued a book in the series, Foundation's Edge, and this is book 4 of the Foundation series. This is a Valentine Del Rey printing from 1988, first paperback printing. Michael Whalen cover art, and then the Bantam edition from the 1990s of Foundation's Edge, and I believe that's Jim Burns cover art.
Looks like a romance cover.
It does kind of look a little romancy. The Foundation series was very popular. It was a terrific series based on kind of Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire in the Foundation trilogy, and then in the books that continued by Asimov and then later on by others after his death. The story is the Galactic Empire, which is about to collapse, and as all empires do, they build and then they collapse. And what Asimov and his heroes wanted to do was to minimize the era of chaos after the collapse of the empire. Kind of like with the Roman Empire, when Rome fell, there was chaos in Europe for 1,000 years in the Middle Ages, in the medieval era, and so they wanted to kind of guard civilization. The other series that was very popular was the robot series, with Caves of Steel was the first one in the series. This is a 1958 Panther book, Caves of Steel, and the American Pyramid book, F784, Caves of Steel, with a Ralph Burlhart cover. That's from 1962, and then this is a second printing from 1968, Caves of Steel. This is a Fawcett Crest book, T1659, which is a more in the late 60s, early 70s reprint of the Caves of Steel. The other book was iRobot. This is the Valentine printing. I believe that's Barclay Shaw or Darrell K. Sweet cover art. And then it was also reprinted by Bantam Spectra Books. And later on, in 1984, they had Asimov continued the robot series with the Robots of Dawn. This is the first printing, Michael Whalen cover art, Elijah Bailey and R. Daniel Oliva is the robot. So these are, the robot books are actually science fiction crime books with a human and a robot detective. Great stories, great stories. And actually there's another book, I believe, in the series that somehow connects the robot series to the Foundation series, which I don't have that. These are a few of the Asimov books that I have. I had a large collection of them, but they were lost in Hurricane Sandy, so I haven't not been able to replace those. But I have these few left, and I just wanted to do something on Asimov because I think he's one of the greatest science fiction writers, and he was a great proponent of rationalism and nonviolence and knowledge. And this is a story, 8 stories from The Rest of the Robots, which is a Pyramid book, V3296. This is from the late 60s or early 70s. I don't know who did the cover art, but there's stories. These are pulp stories from the that are in the robot series. Other famous books that he wrote. This is a Crest book. It's number T1401. Earth is Room Enough. Standalone novel. The Martian Way is a British Panther book, and it has 4 stories in it. The Martian Way, Youth, The Deep, and Suckerbait. This is Panther book number 1799. And The Best of Isaac Asimov is a Fawcett Crest book, and this has a collection of 12 of his best stories, best short stories. The other thing about Asimov was that he was a prolific science fiction writer, but he was also a prolific nonfiction writer. And I'm going to just show a few of those now. So the paperbacks. The Human Body, Its Structure and Operation. This is Signet number Q3706. This is the sixth printing, probably from the 1970s, and it's illustrated human body. So this is a science book. Science, Numbers, and I is an ACE book, 75455, and these are essays on that Asimov wrote about science, mathematics. Dell number 6695 is Opus 100, and that's his 100th book. It's a Dell paperback from 1970, and it contains all kinds of essays, articles, and scientific articles and essays. And he was a good read. He was a great popularizer of science. He was one of the, him and Robert Heinlein were brought in on a lot of the television shows in 1969 during the moon launch and the landing on the moon and the other Apollo missions to the moon. They were brought in as science advisors and as people to talk to on a lot of popular shows, to talk to people about what was going on in the space program and what the astronauts were dealing with. Heinlein and Asimov were very good at popularizing science, which is something that they really wanted to do very much. Also, Asimov was a great fan of mystery and crime stories, and he was an avid Sherlockian. He was a member of the Sherlock Holmes Baker Street Irregulars, and he wrote a lot of mysteries and mystery short stories. And this is one, Panther. It's Panther Science Fiction. It says Asimov's Mysteries. This is a second British edition from 1970, Asimov's Mysteries. Panther Science Fiction. The stories are mysteries, but it's under the Panther Science Fiction rubric, because Asimov basically was known as a science fiction writer rather than as a mystery writer. A lot of people don't realize that he did write quite a few mysteries, and some of them really excellent. Another one that he did was A Whiff of Death, and this is the British Sphere book edition with the skull cover, crime novel. And another edition of it is a Lancer book the book was originally from 1958, but this edition is probably from around 1972, Whiff of Death, another again with the skull cover. So Isaac Asimov passed away in Brooklyn, New York, where he lived most of his life, in 1992. He was a great writer, and I met him a couple of times at some shows and conventions, had a couple of books signed by him. Always seemed like a genial, happy, fun-loving guy. He loved the ladies. He was a raconteur. He loved talking about everything and anything under the sun. He wrote a lot of books on a lot of different subjects. I mean, I've just touched a few, just really scraped the surface on a few of them. But I just wanted to give you this little kind of a peek at some of the books of Isaac Asimov. He shouldn't be forgotten. I mean, the thing is that newer science fiction fans and readers should definitely look at some of his books. They should definitely read the robot novels, which are classics, and of course the Foundation trilogy, the original 3 books, and then the books after that, which are also classics. And his mysteries are good, and his nonfiction scientific books are very good if you're into that area of reading, science fact and science research and information on because he was very good at popularizing and explaining things, scientific methods and procedures very well. So Isaac Asimov was one of a kind, a very special writer, science fiction, and a person of great knowledge, great intelligence, intellect, and somebody that we will all miss. But he did leave us 500 books. 500 books. So get reading, because if you're an Asimov fan, I don't know, nobody's read all 500 of them. But
Has.
well, maybe somebody out there has. But you know what? They're probably all worth reading. They're all worth reading. He was terrific. His the other thing is that his memoirs, big, thick, double-day hardcovers, 2 of them, In Memory Yet Green, and I can't remember the other. The sequel to it was he wrote his own autobiography of his life and growing up and his affair with science fiction. That's a phenomenal book also. But all the Asimov stuff is great. And again, I just wanted to do this video to celebrate Isaac Asimov and his work, and I hope you enjoyed it. Give us a thumbs up if you did, and share it with a friend. If you know somebody who's an Asimov fan, maybe they'll enjoy this also. So I want to thank you for looking, and see you next time.